What we are dealing with here is a perfect engine. A pool playing machine.
This shark has staked a claim in the waters off this pool table.
You yell pool player, everyone says, huh? What? You yell pool shark, we got a panic on our hands.
This shark swallow you whole.
Have you ever seen one do this before?
No.
He's trying to run!
Shark first!
You're gonna need a bigger cue. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us here on Seeking Gravity for another journey down the rabbit hole of discovery in our attempt to become better pool players.
As you could probably guess from the promos and introduction, this episode is all about sharking and pool etiquette, with the shark almost as realistic as the original.
Absolutely, absolutely. James, why don't you explain for all those watching who might not understand what sharking is, what it means when we're talking about the game of pool?
Sharking is when your opponent attempts to distract or throw you off your game through some kind of action, whether it is tossing out a comet or does something visually distracting in your sight line as you're shooting.
Right, and those comments can be anything like simply just talking to you in general while you're shooting, not necessarily, talking crap, but just to take your focus off the game. And to be clear, the art of sharking is almost always frowned upon, especially when it's about a serious match or money's on the line. But if you're just a couple of friends casually playing a game, it can add some entertainment value.
Sharking can also come in the form of sarcasm or a joke to make you laugh, even at times to get you upset. I think it depends on the person. So perhaps the more you know your opponent, the more effective you may be at knowing how to get under their skin rather than a stranger.
It's a sound theory, James, and one we decided to put to the test with our cast of players. We set up a scenario where players were encouraged to go well above and beyond what you consider normal sharking techniques, all for the sake of discovering what would be most distracting.
Here's the setup and rules. All players were asked to find a shot with a moderate difficulty to repeatedly attempt, meaning a shot they could confidently assume 7 out of 10 makes, but probably not 10 out of 10. That player then left the room prior to shooting so the rest of the cast could strategize of what would be the most effective in creating failed shot attempts through sharking. All of the sharks could do anything they wanted to create a distracting environment aside from making physical contact with the player or giving the impression of physical contact or blocking their visual sight line of the shot. So, will the sharks be able to effectively lower shot success rate? If so, what distractions were most effective? Let's find out.
One shooter, 6 sharks, and pretty much no rules to the depth of distractions they could deploy. With plenty of props on hand and a cast ready to make each other miss shots, they each had their go at the table for 10 shots while the sharks had a feeding frenzy. There were lots of ideas and attempts, from the super silly to the super subtle. Out of all the shark attacks, there were 2 very clear winners in the distraction department. First was laughter. You would assume that visual distractions or insults would be the quickest way to pull focus from your opponent, but we found it was the funny and lighthearted approach that was the best way to create missed shots.
I found it funny, and so when I'm laughing, obviously my body isn't shooting correctly because it's shaking.
What I think got to me a little bit was the darn little shark.
The little repeating shark probably got everybody at some point, just not because it really messed with your concentration, but it just made you start laughing.
We're really not, but when the little sharky repeats it, it's
I know, it is way funnier.
Da-na-na-na.
The silliest things that we were trying to do, I think, didn't bother people. And it was the things that bothered people the most were when we would all of a sudden be quiet, and it would just be deathly quiet in the room. I think that bothered people.
For that pocket.
Yep, that's right. Out of everything the cast tried, dead silence was by far the most effective technique to lower player shot percentage rate.
For the most part, it was the more subtle stuff that shocked people than the over-the-top stuff.
And everybody's staring directly at the person while everything's silent. I think we're not used to silence in general. We have some kind of ambiance sound. And so that silence probably was the most distracting for everybody.
I think it's actually easier if there's a lot going on. I can kind of just tune that out. So out of the 10 shots, I think I made 9 and missed 1, which was funny because the one I missed, no one was distracting me. It was so funny.
So, what were the learning moments that we took away from all of this silliness? And could you benefit from having a little fun sharking session with your friends?
Control what you can control and try to block out everything else. And, you know, that goes for laughing, you know, rude players, opponents, whatever. You know, ultimately what they're doing shouldn't affect what you're doing on the table. And, you know, that's another skill that people can work on to be able to block those things out. And you see it with the pros all the time when they get on a big stage. It's not necessarily sharking, but the moment gets to them.
But it actually helped because now I kind of know how to adapt noise around or things like that. I need to just focus on the shot and kind of try to block it more out.
For me, what I took away is I think, you know, going to higher level tournaments where there's a lot going on, I've really gotten better at tuning everything out and just focusing on the game.
I think mentally we have to prepare ourselves when we are shooting pool, and I think that making sure that it's our game and not everybody else's game is probably the most important thing, and that's just something that we would need to do in general, whether it be if somebody's sharking or if we are going in there and we are interacting with one of our teammates or with somebody, making sure that we're not distracting ourselves as well and just mentally being prepared to play that game and focusing on that game.
To recognize that I can overcome this. I can ignore this person that's being a jerk or doing whatever, making loud noises, trying to walk in my way. Just take a deep breath and ignore it and play on.
Yes, it was silly and over the top, but just as we're beginning this journey of pool experiments, we're discovering just how important all of these are, and thankfully took the time. We're always taking something valuable away from the experience. So, get out there and have a just for fun sharking session with your friends and discover how you can grow from the experience.